Thank you all for coming. Today we have Lesley Ward and Lauren Siegel presenting on the new MCAT exam for new doctors. We will have a short question and answer session at the end, so please wait for the microphone before you ask your questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So thank you all for coming today and joining us to learn about the new MCAT 2015 exam. So thank you guys for coming during your lunch break. My name's Lauren Siegel, and I'm here with my colleague Lesley Ward, and we're both from the Association of American Medical Colleges, or the AAMC. So let's get started. So here's just a brief overview of what we're going to talk to you today. We're going to talk primarily about the new exam. We're going to go over why the exam's changing. We're going to talk about the organization of the exam. We're also going to talk about the score scale, things you need to know about what it's going to be like on test day, and then we're going to talk about some of our free and low-cost test preparation materials that are already made available to you now. And at the end, we're going to leave plenty of time for you guys to ask any questions that you have. And if we don't get to your question during this presentation, don't worry, we're both going to be at the booth all weekend, and we have another presentation tomorrow as well, so feel free to come back. So let's talk a little bit about why the exam's changing. There are really two main reasons for this. The first is that it's a large standardized test, and it's really just best practice that we review these tests every now and then. The second reason is because this exam is used in almost all US and Canadian medical schools, and it's a real indicator for admissions committees about your readiness for success. So we need to make sure that the exam is keeping pace with the study and practice of medicine. So when we made these changes, the AAMC, its medical schools, and a special committee called the MR5 committee got together, and they did a lengthy and thorough review of the exam, making sure that we were keeping what was working, eliminating what didn't, keeping a testing format that was proving successful, and adding things that we needed to add to make sure that we were making sure that the exam was doing what we needed for future physicians. And just to give kind of a better perspective of why we're changing this, I'm going to do a little poll. How many of you guys were born after 1991? That was 24 years ago. The last time we revamped this exam, did a major review, was in 1991. A lot has changed during that time, so it's definitely time that this exam has a little facelift. So that's really why we're changing it. So let's go over the basics of the exam. The exam has 4 sections. It's a computer-based multiple choice exam. The 4 sections are the biological and biochemical foundations of living systems, the chemical and physical foundations of biological systems, the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior, and the critical analysis and reasoning skills section. One thing you might already be noticing is that the exam is very interdisciplinary. No longer is the exam going to focus on just telling us what you know, that you can memorize a bunch of facts and be able to spit them out on a test. We're really asking you to show us how you can apply content as well. So that's kind of a major difference with this new exam. So the natural and social sciences sections are broken down into what we call foundational concepts, or the big ideas in science. Within those foundational concepts, there are content categories, which are really just the topic and subtopics that you need to be able to understand those big ideas in science. So this chart, it's kind of hard to see, I realize, and there are a lot of words, but basically it just shows you that these are the natural sciences sections, and they're broken down into foundational concepts. The chemical, or the biological and biochemical foundations of living systems section has 3 foundational concepts, and the chemical and physical foundations of biological systems has 2 foundational concepts. And all this information is available online at that URL. It leads you to a tool called What's on the MCAT 2015 exam, and Lesley's going to talk more about that later in the presentation. But it's really the whole content of the exam, and that's kind of where you can find all of this information. Just like those 2 sections, the psychological, social, and biological foundations of behavior section has 5 foundational concepts that you're responsible for. Another important aspect of the natural and social sciences sections are these the scientific inquiry and reasoning skills. The scientific inquiry and reasoning skills, there are 4 of them, and they are asking you to solve problems by combining your knowledge of the content categories and then applying a skill to those questions. So that means that each question has kind of 2 parts to it, showing us what you know and then how to demonstrate one of these skills. And basically we're doing that by asking you to read the passage, and many of those passages have graphs, tables, and charts, and that's how you use these skills. There's one more section of the exam that I haven't talked about, and we're going to talk about that now. That's the critical analysis and reasoning skills section. Unlike the other 3 sections of the exam that I've mentioned, this one's more like the reading test that you've had in the past. It's going to give you a passage with questions, and there's no required knowledge to answer those questions. It's all the information is presented in the passages and questions themselves. The passages that you'll receive are in the social sciences and humanities disciplines, so you could get something about ethics and philosophy, population health, studies of diverse cultures, theater, music, art history, things like that. And again, you don't have to have any specific knowledge of those to be able to answer the questions. And along with our test preparation materials, the best way also to learn this content that's going to be tested on the exam is in your courses themselves. The content is taken from introductory biology, introductory general chemistry and organic chemistry, and introductory physics. It's also going to come from first semester biochemistry and first semester psychology and sociology concepts. All the research methods and statistics concepts that you need, you'll find in your introductory science labs as well as introductory psychology and sociology courses. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lesley, who's going to talk to you about the score scale.
Thanks, Lauren. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a topic that probably some of you will be interested in, your scores. We do have a new score scale for this exam. And before we get into talking about it, it's important to understand that the current and new exam differ in many ways, some of which Lauren has already touched on, but primarily in terms of the fact that there's more content and the emphasis is placed on those scientific inquiry and reasoning skills. So when you look at this exam, comparing the current exam and the new MCAT exam is a little like comparing apples to oranges. Given these differences, the new exam needed to have a new score scale than the one we're currently using. So let's look at this new scale. You can see we have 4 sections, and each section is going to have a scale that ranges from 118 to 132. Each of those sections will then be added together to give you your total MCAT score. And the scale for the total score is going to range from 472 to 528, with 500 being in the middle of the distribution for the total scale. Now, our research has shown that historically, on the current and past versions of the MCAT exam, students who score in the middle of that scale and who are admitted to medical school typically succeed according to a number of outcome measures, such as graduating from med school in 4 or 5 years or passing their USLME STEP exams on the first attempt. And you may be wondering how we came up with this new score scale, and there were a number of things that we took into consideration. During our initial review of the exam, we learned that admissions officers were comfortable working with a scale that contained 15 separate score points, just like the current one does. And we also wanted to produce a total score that was the sum of the 4 section scores. We wanted to pick a set of scales that would stand on their own with minimal risk of being mistaken for others. And in particular, we needed a set of scales that did not overlap with the current scale or with any other scoring system that is commonly known or used. And of course, we wanted to emphasize the middle of the scale, which is that 500 number. So I'm just going to pause for a second to talk about those examinees who are going to be taking the exam in April and May of 2015. It's going to take a little longer than a typical 30 to 35 days for scores to be reported for those early examinees. This is because we are going to need to take additional time to conduct and verify extra analysis that are required to establish the new scales. This is called the norming process. This new exam is going to be in place until 2030. So that will be by the time you've completed med school, you've finished residency, and you are well into being practicing physicians. So we need to make sure this new score scale is going to be correct so that the scores for these early examinees will mean the same thing for those that take it years later. We will also be providing early examinees preliminary or estimated percentile ranks before those operational scores are released, and that will be within 2 to 3 weeks following your test administration date. These preliminary estimates will inform you of the range of percentile ranks in which your scores on the new exam are likely to fall and provide you with information to help decide whether or not you should plan to retake the exam or where you should apply. And we do promise that early examinees will receive their scores prior to the first AMCAS 2016 application release. So in addition, examinees that are going to be taking this exam early are going to be offered a financial incentive. This is being done, as I mentioned earlier, to help ensure that we have sufficient numbers of examinees to support the initial scaling and norming analysis mentioned earlier. This incentive will be provided in the form of an Amazon.com gift card, and it'll be an amount of $150. And this will be half the cost of registering for the new exam. And recipients of our fee assistance program will receive a $60 Amazon.com gift card. And I'm going to turn it back over to Lauren, and she's going to talk a little bit more about the fee assistance program and also give you a sense of what test day will look like.
Okay, so this chart shows you the breakdown of what the sections and how you'll see them on test day. This information is online, so don't worry about scribbling it all down. But you can see that this is how the sections will appear, the number of questions, and then the total time that you'll receive. One thing to note is that the exam will be longer. It's about 2 hours longer. Its total seat time of actually taking the exam is about 6 hours and 15 minutes. But that doesn't include all of the other test day related activities like getting to the testing center, signing your examinee agreement, and watching the tutorial before you actually start the test. And so in total, test day will be about 7.5 hours. This is actually slightly shorter than what it was between 1991 and 2006 when the test was actually administered on paper instead of on a computer. So that's just something to also keep in mind. We want to point out that the test is longer because we do have more questions. And so in order to have more questions, this allows for more reliable section scores. And also it allows you to have, we've built in more working time. So this will really allow you to really think about the passage, read it, read the questions, and make a informed decision. So just like the current exam, you're going to have to pre-register. You can't just show up on test day and hope to be able to take the exam. You can still request accommodations, and if you are granted additional testing time, you will be able to take the exam over 2 days. The exam will also include 2 10-minute breaks plus a 30-minute mid-exam break to take a break from the test and grab some food if you want. You can't leave the testing center, but bring it with you. We also have something called the Hotel Discount Program, which is new. It's something that's available now, so if you are thinking of taking the current exam instead, you can take advantage of this benefit. But we do realize with the longer testing date that some people may actually have to travel and stay overnight to take their exams. So we've negotiated a preferred rate with the Hampton Inn, which is within 10 miles of almost all U.S. testing centers, and the code is online, and you just plug that code in when you're reserving your hotel room, and we hope that that helps for examinees. This is the calendar for next year. Registration is going to open next year in February of 2015. All exams are going to start at 8 o'clock in the morning. We won't be offering double days anymore, meaning that we have an administration at 8 o'clock in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. We've heard from examinees that people prefer to take the exam on a Friday or Saturday, so you'll notice that most of the exams are on Fridays and Saturdays now. And the cost of the exam is $300. But the AAMC sees that the cost of applying to medical school should not be a barrier for somebody who wants to become a physician. So the Fee Assistance Program is a program that assists examinees and applicants who without financial assistance wouldn't be able to take the exam or apply to medical school. The benefits include reduced MCAT registration. So for the new exam, it's $115 instead of $300. You'll receive up to $500 for accommodation reevaluation should you need that for your accommodations application. You also receive free MCAT test preparation materials. You'll also get free access to the medical school admission requirements, up to 15 medical schools and all other fees waived for the AMCAS application, and a reduced subscription to Pivia, which is a new service. It's an online portfolio that allows you to keep track of all of your information. And so in total, this program has about $800 that you'd receive. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Lesley. She's going to talk about the test preparation materials.
So I just have a question. How many of you have taken a look at any of the 2015 resources that we have online? Okay, good. This will be informative then, I hope. And we've since added a new product just in the last couple of weeks. So the MCAT team has been hard at work developing new and free low-cost test preparation resources over the last couple of years. And so I'm going to start with the first product, which is kind of an overview of the exam, and it's a free interactive tool called What's on the MCAT 2015 Exam. And so this is an online resource where you can really find out big picture, everything that you need to know for this new exam. You can take a tour of the exam content, and that's going to allow you to actually explore the 4 sections of the exam and how it tests the scientific inquiry and reasoning skills. So you can really map the content back to those foundational concepts and skills. It also includes sample questions that illustrate how the new exam is going to test all the concepts and skills you'll be responsible for knowing, and it provides solutions to those questions. It has video tutorials within it, and it also is available for download, so you can download it completely or by section if you want to review the concepts and questions. So this next resource is pretty cool. I'm sure some of you have heard about the flipped classroom model and the Khan Academy, but about 2 years ago, the AAMC collaborated with the Khan Academy and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and launched this competition to actually train the winners of the contest to create study resources for the new MCAT exam. And the content includes instructional videos and review questions covering all the content in the natural and social sciences. There are more than 500 videos to date and hundreds of questions available online. This is completely free access, and it receives about 30,000 views daily, and the collection has been growing. And you can access the up there at the URL, you can access all the videos and the content at khanacademy.org/MCAT. So this next resource I'm going to talk about is actually housed within the AAMC's website, and all of the Khan Academy materials are within our pre-health collection and in the MedEd portal, iCollaborative. It is a free searchable online repository of instructional materials recommended for teaching pre-health competencies, and it will include those on the new MCAT exam. It primarily supports undergraduate faculty who are working with students such as yourselves, but students can also find great value in looking at those resources. And as I mentioned, this is another completely free resource, and it's available to all students as part of the AAMC's commitment to ensuring that the cost of preparing is not a barrier to students. So this is our official guide to the MCAT exam, and this was released in April as well, along with the interactive content outline. And this guide is going to provide you an overview, again, of all aspects of the exam, from registration and test day procedures to the content of the exam, and it also includes practice questions, 120 of them. 30 are from each of the 4 sections. And every question will include an explanation for both correct and incorrect answers. It also is downloadable in an ebook format, and that was actually just released a couple weeks ago, so you can carry it like that if you like. So those same 120 questions in the book are also available in an online format. So you can actually practice in that online testing environment that you'll encounter on test day. And so, again, these products are covered under the Fee Assistance Program. And so this is the new product that I just mentioned. This is our the first official MCAT 2015 sample test, and it's designed to help you prepare for the exam. It's a full-length online test, and it includes the same number and types of questions that you're going to see on exam day. There are some enhanced features, which include the options to take timed or untimed tests, and they include solutions and explanations of correct answers as you go, so you can have those on or off depending upon how you want to practice. At the end of the exam, you receive a breakdown of how each question relates to the content covered on the new exam, so you can map it back, and you'll receive a results report, which will show you the number and percent of questions you got correct. So there's a couple products I just want to give you a quick preview of that we are working on developing, and those will be released in the next year. So we've had a lot of questions about keeping current practice materials available for the new exam, and we agree the prior materials are useful, but we are also concerned about offering products that are potentially misleading to you, so they don't cover all the exam on all the content on the new exam. And we're worried about leaving the products unchanged because there would be no way to give any indication whether or not specific questions would be useful for the new exam. So we thought we could do something a little better, and we're working on that now. It's going to be called Official MCAT 2015 Questions, and they are going to be from the current preparation products, but they are being reclassified to see which questions map to the new exam. And those questions that do map to the new exam will also receive a classification for both a foundational concept and skill that we've been talking about. And so we're going to organize those questions into groups and release them in study sets. So the light categories will include biochem and physics and critical analysis and reasoning skills in the first release. So in the fall of 2015, we are going to offer a full-length practice test, and that will be composed of questions from previously administered exams. And this is going to give us the opportunity to actually use the score scale that we were talking about a little earlier. And like all of our products, these will be offered to students under the for free in the Free Assistance Program. So finally, I am just going to direct you back to our website. This has a lot of information that we haven't talked about today, and it includes a lot of videos and links to all the resources I just mentioned. We'll have information about registration, when it's going to open, and I am going to turn it back over to Lauren now, who can give you a sense of how you can keep connected with us and get updates.
So the best way to get in touch with us, there are lots of different ways, but one great way is through our Facebook and Twitter feeds. We have all the wonderful resources that you see listed here, and they're all represented here this weekend. We have presentations about all of them, and we talk about all of these resources online through Facebook and Twitter. We give you updates, tips, resources. You can ask us questions and we'll respond back to you. So this is a great way to stay connected with us. For information specifically about MCAT, you can go to our website. It has all the information that you need. You can email us at mcat2015@aamc.org. We will respond back to you with that. You can call us. We have a wonderful contact center that is on the phone Monday through Friday and will be available to answer any of your questions. You can also tweet at us at AAMC_MCAT for specific MCAT questions. We put information about score release, updates on deadlines, and things like that. And then again, our pre-med Twitter and Facebook feeds. And so with that, we're going to stop talking and we're going to turn it over to you guys to ask us any questions that you might have. So thank you all very much.
Is on the website?
Yes, it's actually being recorded right now, so it'll be available to view afterwards. Go ahead.
The sample exam that you gave us, it said that you can do it 10 times. Does that mean it's like a new sample test each time, or is it the same test for those 10 times?
It's the same test for those 10 times.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you know how you guys are going to compare like the new MCAT to the old MCAT when you're viewing applicants? Because I know that some medical schools accept both, but when they're trying to compare, like how would they like view it? Because there are additional sections to your new MCAT, and yeah, I'm just wondering.
Sure. So that's a really great question, and we do get that question on a lot. So like we mentioned, that the exams test different concepts, so you really can't compare them, and that's why we have a different score scale for both of them. And so what we're recommending to admissions committees, the medical schools, we don't actually review your applications. The medical schools do that. And so a medical school, we've recommended that they review applicants the way that come in with the current exam, the way that they always have. For new MCAT, for examinees or applicants who come in with the new MCAT scores, we're providing everyone with percentile ranking, so you can see how you stack up against other examinees who've taken the exam. And we're also letting them know that the MCAT exam is just one part of your overall application. It's not the only part. So it's really important to make sure that you have great experience in shadowing and coursework and things like that. So that's kind of how we're going with it for right now. I hope that helps.
Thank you.
Goodness. Sure. Anyone?
You mentioned some people are granted extended testing time. You mentioned some examinees are granted extended testing time that they can test over 2 days. What criteria is used to grant that?
We have an accommodations program. So if a student has taken standardized tests with accommodations before, they go through the process of applying. All the information is online, and we have I believe it's a 60-day review process for all applicants who apply with accommodations, and then we grant them accommodations and work with the testing centers to make sure that they're set up the way that they need to, if they need to have food in the room with them, or if they need to be in a private room, for example. So we work with lots of different accommodations, not just additional testing time.
What are the requirements to be eligible for the fee assistant program?
So right now, it's based on family income, and there are other eligibility requirements that I'm going to be honest, I don't know the specifics about, but if you go to the fee assistance website, it has all that information. The fee assistance program is changing next year, and it'll be good for 2 years. So right now it's only good for the calendar year in which you received the award, and then you'd have to reapply, and you can apply up to 5 times. But the fee assistance program is going to change. It'll be available for 2 years next year, starting in January of next year. And then you will also need family income information from both living parents, not just one. But all that information's online, and it's much more detailed. Sure.
I have a 2-part question. Excuse me. First part is, how do you suggest we study for the MCAT while taking classes concurrently? And then also, what is the recommended time frame between beginning your studying and taking the exam?
Sure. So by now, you guys are, for the most part, college students, right? You kind of know what your studying habits are. You know how to prepare for your courses and for a test. Your studying is really up to you. If you work best by yourself, if you work in a study group better, if you need the private tutoring, that's something that you can certainly take advantage of. All of our resources are free and low cost. The Khan Academy is a great new resource to help you study and prepare, but it's really up to the individual person. We can't recommend a specific way for you to prepare for the exam. In terms of length, again, it's on the individual basis. We have heard that people start preparing within 3 to 6 months before they plan to take the exam. But it also just depends on you. You know, if you need more time, take more time, things like that.
One of your slides, right here, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
That's all good. One of your slides was mentioning a practice test, number 1, coming out next September 2015. Do you know if there will be any other practice tests, maybe from other organizations or even AAMC before that?
So So I can't speak for other organizations, but we will be releasing more practice tests in the future. But the practice test one will, I think it's fall 2015. And so the sample test can also be used in the same way as a practice test, if you want to think of it like that.
Okay. Is the sample test, is that essentially the same format as the practice test, or is it abbreviated?
No, it's the same length. It's 230 questions as you will encounter on exam day.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Just one thing about that. The reason it's called a sample test is because we can't offer you the estimated score scales that we can on our current practice tests. Our current practice tests come from previously administered MCAT exams, and so we have all that information available on how students did by taking those specific questions. But because the exam hasn't been given yet, we don't have that information, so we can only give you a certain amount of information. Also, it's just a representation right now as we know it, and then next year, when the new practice tests, it'll have the previously administered questions, things like that.
I'm interested in taking a test prep course in the summer to take the MCAT at the end of the next summer. But I was wondering, is there enough material that has been released by the AAMC that would make a third-party test prep course be a worthwhile investment?
Like Lesley mentioned, we really can't comment on other outside third-party commercial test prep companies, but the AAMC is doing everything that we can to make sure that you can prepare as well as possible for the exam with our sample test, with the official guide, the Khan Academy resources, and our new study sets that will come out. The study sets won't be in the form of a test, but there'll be just hundreds of questions that you can use. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. And if you have any other questions, just let us know.